You're listening to Protecting What Matters, a podcast by the Ohio Department of Commerce. Commerce is Ohio's chief regulator, and we play a vital role in keeping you safe by protecting your property, your money, and some of the products you use every day. This podcast is designed to bring awareness to important issues and help educate consumers and businesses. Join us as we chat with trusted industry experts focused on providing you with the tools you need to help you protect what matters most in your life.
I don't know how many times that I, as a firefighter, have come up on a house where somebody's melted their siding because they left their grill right up against the side of that house, and they just opened up their lid and they had a little bit of flame coming out, and it overheated and melted that siding. So that's one of the things to make sure to keep things safe.
The Fire Prevention Bureau of the State Fire Marshal promotes awareness of fire safety practices through programs and educators actively engaged with the fire service, collecting data from fire incidents and promoting education. I'm Andy Ellinger with State Fire Marshal, and with me today is Ken Klouda, the Bureau Chief for the Fire Prevention Bureau. How are you today, sir?
Good, how about you?
I'm doing all right, it's summer.
It is indeed, it's summertime.
With summer, we want to get out, we want to do some grilling.
Absolutely.
And with that, we have to take precautions.
Yeah, so when we're doing grilling and we're outside and just generally enjoying being out and about, the best thing to do is to make sure you're keeping yourself safe, keeping your family safe, friends safe. And ways to do that is to make sure you're keeping that grill away from anything that can burn. So we want to keep it about 10 feet away from houses or any other structure. And it's just one of those common sense things that we take for granted. I don't know how many times that I, as a firefighter, have come up on a house where somebody's melted their siding because they left their grill right up against the side of that house, and they just opened up their lid and they had a little bit of flame coming out, and it overheated and melted that siding. So that's one of the things to make sure to keep things safe.
And that's regardless if it's charcoal, if it's propane. These tips are universal.
Exactly.
Yeah. And now, let's say we weren't doing a really good job at the end of the season last year, and we just kind of closed the lid and walked away.
Yeah.
Any kind of prep we need to deal with on the way?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're starting up, especially a propane grill, gas grill, however you want to call it, you make sure that you're checking your hose and your tubing, wherever it's going from the burners into the grill itself, making sure that it's not frayed, cracked. It's important because you could have the gas leaking out there. You could have a back burn, as it were, and cause some flame to come out those parts, and that's not where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Now, we're having trouble getting our charcoal started. Can we just use anything flammable to get that thing going?
No. Please only use the lighter fluid that's recommended. Do not use anything else. I don't want to see any other kind of flammable liquids other than the actual lighter fluid that's involved.
Now, alongside grilling out, sometimes we do campfires. We want to sit around and do that. There's some good precautions we should take, some good tips we should take when we're doing our campfires in our backyards. Yes. Or when we're out.
Yeah, traveling. Absolutely. Actually, there's a whole thing with our partners at ODNR that they have about fires and how to keep them. Right now, we're still in that month of May. Until we get through the month of May, we've got, I think it's March through May, and then again, October, November. We're not going to have any of those kind of fires between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Yeah, the burn ban, right?
The burn ban, right?
Yep. And it probably, but I think it's also in the fall, there's a burn ban.
Yeah, again, there's in October, November is when the next part about that is. So we want to make sure that we're not doing any of these things between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. And it's not a bad thing to consider as you're even moving through the summer months when we do get into the drier time where we may not have any rain. That's the reason why we do this, is because if it's dry, you don't want to have any kind of sparks or embers causing any problems and making the fire way bigger than what it needs to be. So those are the things to consider.
So those of us who weren't in the Boy Scouts, there's some ways to put out these campfires that you need to go through every time.
Yes.
Touch on some of those.
So the things to think of as we're starting, I'll just go from the very beginning with this. If you're using just what would you consider a campfire, make sure you got a space that's open enough that there's nothing around that can burn. And then have a barrier of some kind. Stones work. You can dig a a pit, as it were, to start the fire, so that you're keeping that area, again, more secure, to be able to make sure that there's nothing around to be a problem for you to spread the fire if there's any embers that kind of just fly off a little bit there. Light the fire like you would with the Scouts, as you said it. Whatever method you're going to use with that is fine. And then when you're done, the simplest way to do it is make sure you either cover it up with dirt or pour some water. Make sure that all of the embers are cooled and that there's no burning going on, and you're safe then. You've made sure that that fire is not going to be able to cause any issues for anybody else.
Okay, that's great. Another thing that goes along with summertime is mowing the grass. And a lot of these power tools, they take fuel, and you can't just store that stuff anywhere, right?
Right.
So give us some tips on fuel storage and just safety around these lawnmowers, et cetera.
Yeah. So for storing the fuel, again, try to use it in smaller quantities. I mean, a 5-gallon can is probably all you're going to want to be able to store. I know where I live, I don't have the ability to space where I'm storing fuel. I don't have the ability to have a shed right at this point in time that's away from my house. So any way you can do that to keep it separated from whatever your equipment is, keep it spaced so that the fuel can't accidentally catch the equipment on fire. When you're going to refuel, make sure you're doing it outside. Make sure that your equipment, whatever it might be, lawnmower, weed eater, whatever it is cool before you refill it. Because that could be a potential cause. If the fuel gets warm enough, it's going to ignite, and then you could have a fire that way. So you're going to want to make sure you keep those things away from everything when you do fuel. Make sure it's fueled when it's cool. And again, store everything kind of separated so that you're not going to have any issues and any potential causes of fire.
Yeah, and they've got to be the red ones.
Yeah. So if you're using, it depends on what the device is taking, but typically it's gasoline and it's going to be red. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We're outside. We're doing our yard work. We're seeing some debris left over from the fall. Twigs and needles and stuff. We got to get that stuff cleaned up, right?
Yeah. Especially away from your house. So we talk about this thing called wildland urban interface. It's something that we don't really use in Ohio very often, but guess what? That terminology is going to be coming. It's going to be widespread because we're having a lot more of that, where the wildland area and where we're living is now getting closer and closer together. So we want to make sure we're keeping the area clear of any of this debris, this underbrush that you just talked about with the debris. Keep it clear, keep it away from your house. And that helps if there is something where there's a fire that did maybe happen around your home. If you keep that area clear and you keep that underbrush away, you lessen the chance of your house itself catching fire and having an issue there.
Yeah. Those are really some summertime tips, but we want to make sure we emphasize some important home fire safety tips while we're here. Let's talk about smoke alarms.
Okay. What do you want to know?
Well, they're important, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Why are they important? Where do we want to put them?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. So smoke alarms, we want to make sure we're putting those on each level of the house. Each bedroom that you're at, where anybody sleeps, put that inside that bedroom, and then outside where the people sleep. They're important because what you typically have is that early activation, early notification of something happening, in this case smoke building up, and that usually is what tells you that there's a fire happening. So having those placed in those locations that are appropriate, making sure that you're checking the alarms themselves about once a month just to make sure that they're working. Change the batteries on them, we like to say twice a year right now. And then after 10 years, those entire alarms are going to need replaced. The ones that we have interconnected now, it's real fun because when one chirps, they're all going to start chirping to tell you that there's an end of life type situation on one of the alarms. You'll hear it, and they never happen. They never ever happen at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. No. It's always 2 o'clock in the morning when the alarm's chirping, letting you know what's going on. Time to replace it. So you're going to want to make sure you're checking that to replace those alarms, and those are beneficial for everybody. The other thing, too, is carbon monoxide alarms. Those are another one to make sure you have those. The same kind of idea. If you could place it on each level of your house, if you could put it in the bedrooms, that's great. But that's anybody who has anything that's a fuel-burning appliance, no matter the time of year, it's going to potentially give off that carbon monoxide, and you're going to want to make sure you're keeping yourself and your family safe by having those detectors along the line so you can know if something's happening.
Now, how intensely do you have to clean these devices every year or every month when you're inspecting them? Should you be cleaning them?
So you can do the cleaning once a month where you take a vacuum cleaner with a hose attachment where it has the brush. You just go up there and brush around that, and that'd be fine. Usually I like to say, for sure, make sure if you're not doing it every month, hey, spring cleaning. Once a year, go ahead and do some spring cleaning and clean that device. You don't have to take it down. Like I said, just take a vacuum around with the brush attachment and just go around it so that it's taking all of the dirt and debris that's inside of that alarm out so that it can do its job.
Yeah. Going hand in hand with the smoke alarm, if this smoke alarm goes out, we have to have an escape plan. We have to know how to get out of the house, and we want everybody that's a member of the family to know multiple ways to get out of that house.
Exactly. So we recommend, and it's kind of like a national standard, is having 2 ways out of every room of your house. Whether or not that's 2 doors, 1 window, 1 door, want to make sure that people can get out and get out safely. Along with being able to get out, and each room is having a meeting place so that when you do get out of your house, you do know where to go. The worst thing you can have is everybody doing like yard aerobics, going around and around the house trying to find each other, and somebody would go back in, and unfortunately, if that's the case, they might die. So we want to make sure we're trying to keep everybody safe. So having that meeting location. If you live in a suburban neighborhood, mailbox is perfect. Even your neighbor's house is good. If you live out in the rural community, something like a tree out in the front yard would be a good place to meet. And again, just knowing that's where you go, call 911 and make sure you're getting folks there to help you out as quick as you can.
When do you start telling your children this plan and what to do?
I started with my child when he was about a year old, I'll be honest.
Oh, wow.
He understood if the smoke alarm goes off, he was like, what is that? And we told him what it was. He get that confused look on a kid's face, and he kind of looks up. It's like, yes, smoke alarm. We should be moving towards a door, and we talk to him like we normally would. When he started walking is when it really kicked in, where it's like, okay, go to a door. Wait for mom and dad. Go to a door, because he can't open the door yet, but he can at least know the direction to go. So yeah, you can start that young with it. You start having those conversations so they know what to do.
Fantastic. We talk about closing doors.
Yes.
While you sleep. Close before you doze.
Exactly.
What's the science behind that? What's that about?
So what we do know about fires is that the carbon monoxide and the smoke and everything like that is what the danger truly is for you and I. We're not meant to breathe that in. So if you close your bedroom door, you're going to prevent that smoke, you're going to prevent that high heat from getting into your room and giving you potentially some precious seconds to be able to know what to do and to be able to react yourself. The standard door that we have on homes nowadays, those are good for giving you some fire protection, 15, 30 minutes of fire protection, as long as that door is closed. So if you can do that and you can know if that door's closed and you go and you feel it and it's hot, you stay in there, you can make sure you go over to that window that we talked about for your second way out and be able to get out of your house that way.
Okay, that's great. I have a lot of electronics devices, more than I ever did in my entire life, and so I'm always looking for outlets, for chargers, and running cords. I think I'm violating some rules.
Oh, absolutely.
With the cording.
Yep.
Give me some electrical cord tips.
Yeah.
As far as what you should be doing, and inspecting those, and getting rid of those when it's time.
Okay. So we'll start with the simplest of all of these. Your cord for your phones nowadays, when you plug it in your phones, and you got that nice cord where you plug it into the bottom of the phone, and you're going, well, that looks like it's okay. The wires are kind of dangling out. I've wrapped it with electrical tape. We're good, right?
Yeah.
No. So go ahead and throw those away. Get new ones.
Okay.
Following that cord all the way back to your outlet, what I'd like to see is not having multiple things plugged into a multi-plug adapter. I'd like to see everything plugged straight into the wall if possible. Nowadays, they've got USB ports that you can now have for outlets. Those are all been tested and registered, so that those are things that can be done. If you're going to put those in, I'd recommend having somebody who is an electrician do it. But you can use those. You're talking about extension cords and all that going on earlier. Again, best thing to do is to not have those extension cords used for what we call permanent wiring. So if you're leaving stuff plugged in for more than a day, probably need to look at maybe either finding a different place to plug things in, or maybe have an electrician come out and see if they can add an outlet for you. Those are all different things to be able to make sure to keep yourself safe when it comes to electrical fires.
Okay, that's a lot.
It is.
But it's very important, and it should be important.
Exactly.
Right? Sadly, we are losing, in Ohio, we're losing a lot of people to fire fatalities, and the main cause is smoking-related deaths.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to touch on that, some of these preventable smoking-related fatalities that are happening, and what we should be doing.
So people should feel the safest in their homes. And unfortunately, that's where we wind up seeing a lot of people dying in fires. One of the things that you talked about was that they are smoking. The folks who do smoke, if you're going to, make sure you're not tired when you're smoking. We prefer that you smoke outside if you can. It's safer that way. The other part of that, though, is making sure if you are smoking and you're smoking outside like you should, you have an ashtray that can actually be used. Have something in metal. Don't have a plastic container.
Yeah.
Don't put something in with a plastic container where it melts. Don't just flick your cigarettes in your mulch on the side of your house, because that's part of the reason why we're seeing that. And then unfortunately, a wild one is that we're seeing a lot of people who are smoking while on oxygen. And they've got their oxygen on and they're smoking. And they don't take their oxygen off. They've got the oxygen flowing through their usually it's a nasal cannula, and they're smoking on their cigarettes. And they catch their clothes on fire. They catch the tubing on fire because oxygen does burn. And they've got a spark at the end of their cigarette, and it will ignite the oxygen inside the tubing and cause that tubing to melt and burn. Their clothing burns, and unfortunately then they get burned. And we see a lot of things happening that way. So those are some safety tips to be able to make sure if you're going to smoke, do it outside. Please, if you do smoke inside, don't smoke when you're sleepy. Don't smoke when you're laying in bed, and please don't smoke while you're on home oxygen or any oxygen use.
And this is not an occasional thing that happens, unfortunately.
Right.
It's a very significant statistic.
Yes.
An alarming statistic.
It is.
And the State Fire Marshal is concerned about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we've touched on a lot of safety, summer safety, and fire prevention tips. Did we miss anything we should touch on?
I think we did good. We got what we needed to talk about today. So we got our stuff with talking about our safety for cooking, and then we talked about everything that we need to worry about inside the home. So I think we did pretty good. If anybody needs to know anything more, though, they can always reach out to us at the Marshal's office.
Yeah, we've got lots of tip sheets, additional resources on the website. That you can check out at the Fire Prevention Bureau area of the State Fire Marshal's website. We encourage you to do that at www.com.ohio.gov/fire, and you can check out all the fire prevention resources available at the State Fire Marshal.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming.